From the staff that's been confirmed to work on the project so far, Jujutsu Kaisen Shibuya arc is shaping up to be not only the most stacked project to exist in recent memory, but also one of the most stacked projects of all time, because the new Shibuya arc trailer pretty much confirms the reunion of two of the most stacked animation teams, that is the Seshimo team of animators working at Studio Mappa and the genius team of freelance animators led by Hakuyu Go. Now I call this a reunion because these animators weren't necessarily part of different teams before. If you go back in time when most of these animators were young animators, you'll see that almost every single one of them participated in One Punch Man Season 1, alongside veteran animators of that time as well, except Hironori Tanaka, which has always been a mystery to me as to why he did not work on One Punch Man Season 1 when literally everyone else did. Anyway, because naturally most of these young artists are incredibly talented, they eventually became so big that they started doing more and more directorial works. You have Ryu Nakayama, Shun Enokido, Tatsuya Yoshihara, Takahito Sakazume. These four animators are tightly linked friends, and while in One Punch Man they were young animators, right now they are industry-leading directors. Ryu Nakayama and Tatsuya Yoshihara on the Seshimo team with Mappa, whereas Enokido and Sakazume have been major action directors working in the Fate franchise. Similarly, we also had participation by young animators Hakuyu Go and also Itsuki Tsujigami, commonly referred to as Miso. Now how all of these young animators worked together and worked apart along the years will give you a pretty good idea on how the freelance anime industry functions and how less the studio matters and how much more connections matter. In 2016, with My Hero Academia Season 1 Episode 12, something would happen that would literally change the course of the anime industry forever. And that is the aforementioned Hakuyu Go, who was around 24 at the time, gets the opportunity to direct an episode. He was fairly limited when it came to the ambition of the entire episode as a whole, but when it counted, which is the All Might vs. Nomu fight, we got to see the first instance of the Hakuyu Go team going all out. The All Might vs. Nomu fight is still till date probably the most ambitious fight in My Hero Academia, directed by Hakuyu Go and animated by the OG team of the Hakuyu Go animators. This group includes Naoki Miyajima, Toshi Sada, Takumi Sunakohara, Toya Oshima, Kazuto Arai, plus of course Miso and Hakuyu Go themselves. The reason I paired up Miso and Go together is because they are close friends who have been animating together since their rookie days. Now I know that these are a lot of names to keep track of, so I'll just put them on the side of the screen and then add names as we progress. And the person I'm talking about at that specific point will be highlighted in green. For example, alongside these animators, veteran animator Hironori Tanaka also participated in Hakuyu Go's first project. And yes, I'm putting Tanaka alongside all of these animators here because he is also a core member of the Hakuyu Go team. Now, it was entirely possible for this My Hero Academia Hakuyu Go episode to be like a one and done event. That is, a very young animator taking the directorial role and making an action spectacle through all of his connections. But the reason this episode is a turning point for the anime industry is because this would happen again a year later. My Hero Academia episode 12 walked so that Fate Apocrypha episode 22 could run. Hakuyu Go was able to construct a top-tier action sequence within an episode in My Hero Academia, so of course the next logical step would be to make an entire episode with that same level of ambition. Fate Apocrypha number 22 is one of the best animated episodes in all of anime. It was ambition to a level that was never before seen in TV anime. I mean, if you can get Shingo Yamashita flabbergasted from watching your episode, that obviously is saying something. All of the OG core members of the Hakuyu Go team who participated previously were also part of this episode, alongside a few new faces who would also join as core members. These being Nakaya Onsen, who animated a major portion in the last part of the episode, star animator Bahi JD, who animated the beginning of the episode, Kai Igarashi, who was a rookie Studio Trigger animator at the time, and last but not the least, Toshiyuki Sato, who animated the best scene in the episode, and arguably one of the best animated scenes in anime ever. And this, as I said before, would change the course of the industry in its entirety. Hakuyu Go, with a snap of his fingers, made it so that experienced directors are like no longer necessary to lead a project. Apocrypha was already an experimental project as is, with young talents such as Shun Enokido and Takahito Sakazume taking up action directorial roles, but it still had a very experienced veteran director like Yoshiyuki Asai on the lead role. But this one episode by Hakuyu Go just made it so that you no longer need someone who's been working since 1993. You only need someone who's been alive since 1993. Now, this Apocrypha episode was already the pinnacle of what is possible in anime, but like the team did not slow down after that. They only went full throttle with their next project, and that would be Mob Psycho 100 Season 2 Episode 5, again storyboarded and directed by Hakuyu Go. In this episode, you again got to see all of the core members of the Hakuyu Go team participating. Special praises to Takumi Sunakahara, who made what is possibly his career best work. Rising webgen animator Keiichiro Watanabe was also a core component of Mob Psycho 100's production, so it was only natural that he also joined the most ambitious episode of Season 2. And his work in Season 2 is what I still consider to be the most technically impressive piece of animation that Watanabe has ever put out. This episode would also see another core member for the Go team joining, that being Weilin Zhang. Weilin is of course an incredibly talented animator. There's an argument to be made that he's the best animator. And these are just the kind of people that the Go team attracts. This was not the last animation spectacle we got for 2019 though, because 2019 was arguably the best year for animation as a whole. Later into Mob Psycho's production, the Go team would appear again in episode 11, which is my favorite episode not only in anime, but also in any piece of media ever. The difference this time is that it's not Hakuyu Go leading the project, it's Miso. And Miso's action storyboards for this episode is arguably the best that anime has ever seen. As usual, we would see most of the core members returning, including Nakaya Onsen, who made my favorite scene in the episode. And that was it for Hakuyu Go team for Mob Psycho 100 Season 2. But not for 2019 as a whole. Later into the year, we would also get Fate Grand Order Babylonia. The action scene of Babylonia episode 8 is storyboarded by one of the core members of the Go team, Toya Oshima. This saw the participation of many star animators, including Shota Koshizono and legendary animator Hisashi Mori. GOSSO and Hisashi Mori working together. I wonder if that's going to be a recurring thing in the future. Anyway, the highlight of the season was 10 episodes later, with episode 18 seeing again participation by the Hakuyu Go team. This time, however, the person leading the project was not Hakuyu Go or Miso, it was Nakaya Onsen. But the ambition and the scope of the episode was the same. So now, since 2020 was the most pivotal year with how this team of animators split up, I think it would be appropriate to do like an end of 2019 recap of how this team exists currently. So this is how the team started off. This is how it changed with Fate Apocrypha. And this is how it changed with Mob Psycho 100. We now have a lot more animators on board, with the disappearance of one animator, Toshisada. Now, it's not necessarily known on whether Toshisada retired from the industry or if he's still part of the industry but exclusively working on a pen name. And now with the final project of 2019 being the Nakaya Onsen episode and early 2020, this is how the team changed. Keiichiro Watanabe was no longer part of this team because he switched to working with MAPPA Productions, particularly under the Seshimo team. He's still a freelancer, he could still work with the other projects as well, but because he's now animating the most important scenes in the Seshimo productions, and these scenes tend to be like extremely ambitious and time consuming, he rarely gets time to work outside of Seshimo productions. Provided he had time, there's no reason that he would not have worked on the Babylonia episode, because he's also worked on 2 episodes by the same team, and because he's also worked on Fate before. Now, during 2020 and early 2021 is when we saw a further divide between like the Seshimo line of animators and Team Go. Team Go at this time was working on the Fate Grand Order Camelot movie, whereas the Seshimo team was working on Jujutsu Kaisen. Now again, all of these people still did work together in some occasions, like both of the Jujutsu Kaisen openings directed by Shingo Yamashita. Plus there is still intermixing of young animators working on both the projects, but when it comes to the core team, these 2 projects are now mostly separated. The Camelot movie would be directed by Kazuto Arai, another OG of Team Go. But this time, of the core staff, Keiichiro Watanabe has already disappeared. Toshiki Sato and Hironori Tanaka would also join the Seshimo line of animators instead, focusing heavily on Jujutsu Kaisen and not being able to work on the FGO Camelot movie. Seshimo team would also see new additions such as Ryu Nakayama, who had previously directed episode 16 of FGO Babylonia and now directed episode 19 of Jujutsu Kaisen. Tatsuya Yoshihara, who was an important animator in Fate Apocrypha, also worked like a madman in Black Clover, but now is a very important animator for Jujutsu Kaisen. And Koki Fujimoto, who was previously one of the most important animators on My Hero Academia, making a tremendous number of highlights even in arcs that were generally of a lower priority. Now, how was Keisuke Seshimo able to pull this off? I don't know. Alright, I have no idea. Assembling this kind of a core staff goes beyond simply the influence of Sungo Park as a director or Tadashi Hiramatsu as the character designer. This is Keisuke Seshimo as the animation producer, pulling off some sort of sorcery. As for how the Hakuyu Go team is doing, currently led by Kazuto Arai on FGO Camelot, they still do have most of the core members participating. Arai ended up giving full creative control to the animators for their scenes, and it goes beyond simply full creative freedom for the animation. He gave full creative freedom when it came to the direction as well. He pretty much had different segments of the movie directed and storyboarded by the individual core members. So the movie had like a Takumi Sunakohara segment, a Miso segment, and of course we also had a Hakuyu Go segment. We also saw many of the incredibly talented animators part of Team Go returning for this movie. Nakaya Onsen did not animate or direct anything in this movie, but that's most likely because he was already busy for this movie, because I forgot to mention he's the character designer of the movie. So the Hakuyu Go team had like a natural progress when it comes to producing anime. First, they made one of the most ambitious segments within an episode for a show. Then they made one of the most ambitious episodes as a whole. And now they made one of the most ambitious movies of all time. And yes, the FGO Camelot movie is arguably the best animated movie ever made. The reason I'm saying arguably is while I consider it to be the best animated movie ever made, I also do understand that it's not perfect. From start to finish, it's pure chaos with a complete disregard to consistency. The animators and directors part of this project are just doing whatever the fuck they feel like doing. Since that level of creative freedom is what I love the most about the anime industry, of course I love this movie. Even then, I had to rewatch this movie a couple of times to truly appreciate it, because while watching it for the first time, it gets to a point where you get exhausted by all of the good animation. It really does get to the point where you're no longer like, holy shit, that's one of the best animated and directed scenes I've ever seen in an action anime. And instead you're like, oh look, another scene that falls into the category of one of the most incredibly directed and animated scenes of all time. Just like the scene that I saw 10 seconds ago and the scene that I'm sure I will be seeing in the next 10 seconds. I guess the phrase that too much of a good thing is a bad thing is kind of accurate, because this movie legitimately made some Sakuga animation boring to me. I know that's an absurd thing to say, but if you watch this movie, you will understand what I'm saying. It is too much good animation. Anyway, after this project, the divide between the teams in the anime industry would only get deeper, because the team's leader and the one who kickstarted this change in the anime industry in the first place, Hakuyu Go, would temporarily move away from the industry to do proprietary military service for his country. Even with Hakuyu Go's absence, the entire industry would be united again in early 2022 with Princess Connect Season 2 Episode 4, this time Takahito Sakazume taking the lead, and the list of animators that would put the average Chainsaw Man episode to shame. Later into 2022, we got the triumphant return of Hakuyu Go, storyboarding and directing episode 8 of Mob Psycho 100 Season 3. This would unite Team Go again with a lot of the core staff participating, but no Keiichiro Watanabe because he was busy with Chainsaw Man at the time, and no Hironori Tanaka either because he was busy for the same reason. The Ryu Nakayama-led Seshimo team would also see new participation like Takahito Sakazume and Shun Enokido because they are such close friends with Ryu Nakayama, but they would not appear in the second half of the project because I guess they remembered that they have their own show to make, so they went back to that. That is to say, these two are the directors of Fate Strange Fake. Now, because of this divide that exists between these two teams now, both the shows would suffer quite a bit. Kiro was a very important animator for Mob Psycho 100, but for Season 3 he did not animate a single scene. They did reuse his walk cycle animation that he animated all the way back in episode 1 of Season 1, but he did not make any new animations for Season 3. But even ignoring the existence of the Seshimo line, there was another player, Heavenly Delusion or Tengoku Daimakyou. The Go team played a significant role in the production of Tengoku Daimakyou. First with the opening, this time Weilin Zhang taking the lead, and many of the Go team regulars participating in animation. Then with episode 2, directed by Kashibata and storyboarded by Itsuki Tsuchigami, and later on again with episode 10. This time, Kai Ikarashi taking the lead as the episode director and storyboard artist, with Hakuyu Go and Team Go regulars participating again. Heavenly Delusion must have really been like an extremely special project because many core animators of Mob Psycho 100 chose to instead work on that show. And that just goes to show the power of the meta that was established by Hakuyu Go. At this point, we were getting more and more projects where young animators were taking full reign. Chainsaw Man was the most important animation project for MAPPA, and it was directed by Ryu Nakayama, who made his series director debut with it. Same with Heavenly Delusion. Hiro Takamori made his directorial debut with the show. He was connected to all of these other incredibly talented artists through his work in Fate Apocrypha, where he directed an episode. And this work environment that is created when a young talent takes the lead, brings in all of his friends who are of a similar age and gives them full creative freedom, while also naturally attracting top-tier veteran animators, is the current meta of the anime industry and will be the future going forward as well. All kickstarted, of course, by Hakuyu Go's Fate Apocrypha episode. And now finally, we have the project that this video was supposed to be about in the first place. The culmination of everything that I just explained forming the basis of this one project. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, led by a young director, Shota Gochizono, with massive connections with the entire industry, giving full creative freedom to the artists. And for the first time since 2019, the two biggest action animation teams in the industry are coming back together. There are scenes in the trailer that are very obviously made by people who are part of Team Go that I'll talk about extensively when I do a scene-by-scene breakdown of the trailer. But it's absolutely unbelievable that it's finally happening again. I made a community post talking about this a while ago as well, about how we might get Team Go participating, whether it's going to be like as a core component or just one episode and a couple of cuts here and there is anybody's guess, because there is another project in production currently where it again makes sense for this team to work on, which is the TV anime of Fate Strange Fake. But as long as I get something from this team, it is good enough for me. Now, if I had to guess, I'd assume the director for the episode that will have this scene is in fact Miso, because Miso has worked as an animator on Shota Gochizono's episodes before. But from everything I've explained so far, it should be pretty obvious that every single one of these animators have a very close link with each other, so it could really be anyone from the Go team that is directing this episode. And yes, because of the bad production schedule combined with the creative freedom that the animators and the directors are gonna get, Shibuya arc is just gonna be complete and utter animation chaos. Expect to see consecutive episodes with completely different styles, and maybe even consecutive scenes with completely different styles. This is definitely gonna make a loud group of the casual fan base really angry, but I believe that as long as the creators themselves are happy, that is the best thing that could come out of art as a whole. And even from an adaptation standpoint, because Akutami Gege is such a big fan of Sakuga, I'm sure they are going to be extremely happy with the show as well. And yes, I've said it multiple times in the past and I'll say it here again, the production schedule is still very bad. For those people who are still like, there's no solid proof that Jujutsu Kaisen has a bad production schedule, I made an entire video talking about the production pipelines of Studio Mappa. I'll put it up here. This is what happens when the same team of animators produce a movie and two super high-profile action-packed shows in the span of 2 years. It is physically impossible for that time to just exist out of nowhere. Now, a counter to this production schedule argument would be the scenes that they showed in the trailer. I myself said in the first PV breakdown of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 that the content shown in the trailer could be a pretty good indication as to how far the team is in terms of production. I used the example of Chainsaw Man because the trailer showed the first 6 episodes, and the first 6 episodes were indeed the most polished ones. But I guess the Jujutsu Kaisen team realized that that loophole exists. Most of the scenes from the trailer that are apparently part of later episodes, like this Miwa scene, is definitely pre-animated or pre-made. I'm not just talking out of my ass here, I have definite proof as well. Like these scenes shown from the very first PV of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, they're all from episode 2. So does this mean that episode 2 was finished before time? No. That just means that these scenes were finished before time, because episode 2 also had this scene animated by Dorian. He tweeted about this and the tweet says, I arrived at the last minute to replace a last minute withdrawal, so I wasn't able to turn in a clean layout. Again, this is confirmed by the animator himself. So this is very obvious proof that the season does not have a good production schedule. Only the scenes shown in the trailer that are part of episode 2 were finished before time. The backgrounds and color designs for these scenes were also changed in the final version to match the rest of the scenes from the episode. These backgrounds and such were again pre-made for the trailer because they literally have no idea what the backgrounds are supposed to look like for the rest of the scenes, as the rest of the scenes are not even made yet. So yeah, that's about it. That's everything I wanted to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 Shibuya Arc's production. Most of these are guesses, not finalized at all, but it's still pretty safe to say that Team Go will in fact be participating alongside the usual Team Seshimo participants. Like, we're still gonna get a GOSSO episode, we're still gonna get Tanaka input, we might also get a Ryu Nakayama episode, and we might even get more work by Arifumi Mai. Jujutsu Kaisen's Shibuya arc is definitely gonna be one of the nuttiest and craziest ambitious project that the anime industry has ever seen. And I'll be here, no matter what, to witness the sheer chaos that will be the season. If you like this video, leave a like. If you did not like this video, leave a dislike. Subscribe and share, spread the love. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks for the views.